My name is Ellie. I've lived in Portland, Oregon my entire life. A small, quiet town nestled against the sprawling wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. The suburbs here bleed into the forest, trees so thick they swallow the horizon. Valentine's Day has always been a gentle affair in this place. You see red balloons tied to mailboxes, their strings fluttering in the breeze, and the bakery downtown churns out tray after tray of heart-shaped cookies dusted with pink sugar. Couples stroll hand in hand, exchanging roses or little handwritten cards, their breath puffing out in the chilly February air. It's the kind of predictable sweetness I'd grown up with, the kind that made me feel safe, grounded. That was how it felt, at least, until 1975. Until that one Valentine's night turned everything upside down and left a shadow over every February 14th since. I was 19 back then. Just a kid, really, working the night shift at a gas station perched right off the highway. It wasn't glamorous. Minimum wage, a flickering neon sign that buzzed like a trapped fly, and a concrete lot stained with oil and tire marks. But it was steady work, and I liked the quiet of it. The station sat at the edge of town, where the pavement met the dirt roads snaking into the woods. That night, the air was crisp, biting at my knuckles as I stood behind the counter. I wore a faded blue uniform, the collar frayed from too many washes, and kept a chipped coffee mug close to warm my hands. The clock on the wall, a cheap plastic thing with a cracked face, ticked past 10 p.m., then 11, then midnight. I was starting to think about locking up early, maybe heading home to my little apartment where I could curl up with a blanket and forget the cold. That's when I saw the headlights. Two pale beams cutting through the darkness, growing brighter as they approached. A beat-up Chevy rolled into the lot, tires crunching over gravel, the engine coughing like it hadn't been tuned in years. The door creaked open, and out stepped a couple, young, probably in their early 20s, with that glow you see in people who are still figuring out love. The guy had messy brown hair and a denim jacket slung over his shoulders, hands stuffed in his pockets against the chill. The girl, she caught my eye more, was pretty in a simple way. Her blonde hair tied back with a ribbon, a red rose tucked behind her ear. It was a Valentine's rose, no doubt, the kind you pick up at a corner store for $1 and hand over with a shy grin. They were laughing as they walked toward the station, her arm hooked through his, their voices bright against the stillness.
"Hey,"
the guy said, leaning on the counter.
"you know the way to the campsite up in the woods?"
His tone was casual, like they were on some spontaneous adventure. I nodded, setting my mug down. "Yeah, it's about a mile up the road. Take the left fork when you see it. There's a sign, but it's half buried in weeds, so don't miss it." I paused, glancing out at the night. Fog's rolling in, though. Gets thick out there this time of year. "You sure you want to camp tonight?" The girl smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face.
"We'll be fine,"
she said, her voice light.
"It's Valentine's, you know. Gotta do something special."
They giggled again, sharing a look that made me feel like an outsider to their little world. I shrugged, none of my business, and watched them head back to the car. The Chevy sputtered to life, headlights swinging across the lot, and they vanished down the road into the dark. I figured that was the end of it, just another pair of lovebirds passing through. But I couldn't shake a tiny itch in the back of my mind, something about the way the fog seemed to swallow them whole. Morning came, grey and heavy, the kind of dawn that sits low over the trees. I'd gone home after my shift, slept a few hours, and was back at the station by noon. Day shift this time, covering for a co-worker. That's when I heard the news. A trucker came in, his coat dusted with frost, and leaned over the counter with a grim look.
You hear about that car they found?
He asked, voice low. I frowned, shaking my head. What car? He straightened up, rubbing his hands together.
Some old Chevy out on that dirt road by the woods doors, wide open engine dead. Nobody around, just sitting there like a ghost.
My stomach dropped. I knew it was them, the couple from last night. I could still see her rose, bright against her hair, his easy grin. They find them? I asked, voice tighter than I meant it to be. The trucker shook his head.
Nope. Cops are out there now, but it's like they vanished. Weirdest thing, just that rose on the seat, all torn up.
I didn't say anything else, just nodded and busied myself with the register. But my mind was racing. They'd been right here, alive, laughing, real. And now they were gone? It didn't make sense. The rest of the day dragged on, customers trickling in with bits of the same story. By evening, the police had set up a search. Officers in thick jackets combing the forest, flashlights bobbing through the trees. I watched from the station window, a knot growing in my chest. Days turned into weeks, and the search stretched on. Volunteers, dogs, even a helicopter buzzing overhead. Nothing turned up. No bags, no footprints, no sign of a struggle. Just that car and that shredded rose. The papers called it a mystery, speculated about runaways or a fight gone wrong, but no one had answers. I kept replaying our talk, their smiles, her insisting they'd be fine. Had I missed something? Could I have warned them more? Portland's a small town. Word travels fast. Soon, people started whispering things beyond the facts. Old-timers at the diner swapped tales over coffee, saying they'd heard giggles in the woods on Valentine's night. Soft, fleeting, like kids playing hide and seek. Others swore they'd seen shadows moving between the trees, too quick to catch. I didn't buy it at first. Sounded like ghost stories to spook the tourists. But the rumors clung to me like damp air. Years passed, and the story faded into local lore. I grew up, got a different job, moved to a house closer to town. But that night stayed with me. Every Valentine's, I'd catch myself looking out windows, half expecting to see that Chevy roll by again. I never did, until last year. It was February the 14th, decades later, and I couldn't shake the itch to go back. Maybe I wanted closure, or maybe I just needed to prove it was all in my head. I drove out toward that dirt road, the forest looming darker than I remembered. Fog hung low, thick as soup, curling around my boots as I stepped out of my car. I'd brought a flashlight, its beam shaky in my grip, and a thermos of coffee to keep me steady. The air was still, no wind, no birds, just the crunch of my shoes on gravel. I walked to where their car had been found, the spot burned into my memory. The fork was still there, the sign long gone, swallowed by weeds. I stood there, sweeping the light across the trees, waiting. For what? I didn't know. Maybe those giggles people talked about, maybe nothing. The silence pressed in, heavy, unbroken. My breath fogged in front of me, the cold seeping through my coat. I was about to turn back, call it a dumb idea, when I saw it. A single red petal, bright and fresh, lying in the mud right at my feet. Not wilted, not old. New, like it had just fallen. I stared, heartbeat loud in my ear. Looked around. Nothing but fog and trees. No sound, no movement. My hands shook as I bent down, fingers hovering over it. Where'd it come from? No roses grew out here. Not in February. Not in this cold. Then I heard it. Or thought I did. A giggle. Soft. Quick. Gone before I could pin it down. My head snapped up. Flashlight swinging wild. Fog stared back. Thick and blank. Another giggle. Fainter. From the trees. I stumbled back. Pulse racing. And bolted for my car. Didn't stop till I was locked inside. Engine roaring. I haven't gone back since. Haven't told anyone either. Sounds crazy, even to me. But I can't shake it. That petal. Those laughs. Nights now, especially around Valentine's, I sit up late. Windows shut tight. Sometimes I think I hear it. Soft giggles drifting in from the forest. Like they're calling me out there. I don't answer. Don't know if it's them, the couple, or something else waiting in the fog. Don't want to find out.